Had a video request showing how I do my barrels for the tie cords. I think I'll go ahead and add this to the tie cord yard video series that we're doing. As I said to the person who requested it, I am contemplating doing my barrels differently than what you're going to see here. So just to start off, originally I didn't have that many birds. I had maybe 6 on cords when I first tried them out, and I modeled them after barrels I saw on a man's yard in Wisconsin. And the way he did his is he had a small door down here. It was just literally about this tall, about as wide as your hand. Had a hinge on one side, a couple of air holes drilled in it, and that was it. He'd lock his birds in at night, prop something up against it, keep it shut. That's how he did it. So that's what I did for my first ones. The reason I went away from that, number one, your door is super close to the ground, so if you get a heavy snow and it freezes hard, you're going to be out there chipping snow and ice out of the way before you can open or close the door. Number two, during thaw, if you cut the tops out of the barrels when you set them down, I always put my barrels upside down so the bung is on the bottom, then there's no way for the bird to get in there and stay dry. And thirdly, if a predator is walking around at night, coons in particular, that's basically right at eye level when they're on 4 legs. So it's a more attractive target for them. So this was how I changed to the next version. It's a large square, approximately I'm going to say about a foot by a foot. Hinge in the middle, and I got a hole drilled here, and I took the doors off eventually after I got a good chicken dog because I didn't really need to lock the birds in anymore. You'll see I had to cut it with a circular saw, so I went up high. I've found that doing that weakens the plastic, and I've actually turned some of these barrels into trash barrels because the plastic just snaps, as it gets older. Maybe the blue barrels last longer than these white ones, I'm not for sure. But the other benefit of not using a skill saw in this fashion is what I switched to after doing this first round, and that is I'd drill a hole in each corner while I was drilling my air holes. And once a bird goes in, you've got this nice little gap here that cord can sit in when the bird's inside if you have to lock it in. To latch it, just some baling wire. Nothing fancy. Every farmer should have some baling wire, you know what I mean? And the hinges, again, on most of them I ground them off. These ones I didn't, because this was one of the first ones I made. The roost in here is just a piece of 2x6 that was throwaway from a construction site, and I've got 2 screws from the outside holding it in place. I put it on this one about center. I think in some of the ones I did later, I did them higher up to try and keep the bird up in the top section out of the elements more. And I would typically weigh these down with sand in the bottom. It seemed to work just fine. That way I wasn't have to drive posts next to them to keep them from blowing away in our high winds that we get. Reason I don't put the holes on top, there's a couple. One is obviously this surface is a lot easier to clean. You know, it's more smooth. The other reason is you don't always get the caps or the bungs with the barrels when you get them to fill the holes, and then obviously it would leak. The main reason though why I took these doors off and why I'm reconsidering the overall design is if you leave the doors hinged on here, they'll stay open during the day, but the problem you're going to have is them birds are going to fly up and that cord's going to hang over the back side of that door and drop down in and catch this hinge, and then your bird is hung up. And if it does it multiple times, then you're going to come out and there's going to be a bird sitting here with its legs sticking in the air, not able to do anything. I've contemplated just moving the hinge up here, but then I'd have to do two hinges, one at the top, one at the bottom. Maybe that would solve the problem. I've also considered doing a dome top, but I think that would just make the problem worse here. The other thing I've considered is there's something I always wanted to try. Back in the early 2000s, there was a website called EggBid, and it was basically the eBay of poultry. And along with birds, you could also get equipment. One of the things that a guy was selling was rolls of used conveyor belt, and he said it made great hinges. So I'm thinking, if you were to do a strip that went the full length and just do, you know, 2 bolts, 2 bolts, and 2 bolts, that would probably work pretty well. There's a lot of other people who do their barrels different. I'm also considering making the doors only half as wide. I kind of like them being wide because I can get in there if I have to and grab a bird. But at the same time, if it's half as wide, that helps protect them from the elements better, and it might also help with the structural integrity of the barrel itself, so it'll hold up longer. This plastic, like I said, you can cut it with a grinder, you can cut it with a circular saw, regular drill bits to drill in the holes for the air and for your latch. And that's really all there is to it. To cut the roost, all I did, if I got a board here somewhere, oh, here's a rotten one, but it'll work. You just lay it up towards the back on top of your barrel. You don't want it too far in, because if you have it here, the bird's going to jump off back there and hang itself up around this roost. So I like to keep it here, and that's part of the reason why I use a 2x6, is because then it's got a much wider top. Now you could also just do a 2x4 or a 2x2 or something like that, set it further back, and then put a chunk of plywood or something on there, you know, to make a wider base for them to sleep on. But anyways, you just set it up here where you want it. You just take a marker and you just trace the curve of the barrel on the underside of that board, and you just flip it upside down and cut it where you marked it. Nothing hard about that. But I hope this answers a few questions in regards to one way you can do your barrels. So thanks for watching.